Now for the other one, this obviously should be bigger. Let's say 60%. And now those elements here should be aligned horizontally. So we will give this a flex direction of rho. And we also want them to be put to the bottom. And since this is the cross axis, we have to do this here on the align items thing. And I think that's all for this top middle container. Okay, now let's go to the actual panels. So let's add 2 visual elements. We will call them panel mini fraction because it kind of displays some short information on a fraction. I think I haven't played this game, but that's how it looks like to me. And then we will add another panel, and that we will call panel character because this displays kind of your chief or your a character representing your fraction. And now on this panel that is at the bottom, you can see it is kind of pushed to the bottom here, which is what we wanted. The only thing that we want to do on it is to give it a basis of 80%. It should be much bigger than the other one. And for the other one, we will not give this an actual size, kind of its content should decide its final size. But in order to be able to see anything, we will for one give it some margin on each side except the right side, because we want this to be pushed to the right. And now in order to such that this element doesn't disappear, and we will also need this padding later, we will give it some padding, some top and bottom padding. Now this element is actually there, however it's only filled kind of by its padding. So since we are now having the 2 panels, at least it would be nice if we could start seeing something. And now what I'm going to do, I am going to put the style sheets just in some other folders, but I will still try to create a style sheet for all the changes that are created in this kind of section, so that we still have a possibility to have this kind of self-contained for the lessons. So we will create a new style sheet, go on the style sheets, and I will just call this style. And the first thing is, that's the 4th section, and initial, just as we called the folder. Now save that. And now we will add a class for the panels. And this class should only set the color for one. I think something like that. And the second thing it should do is it should give the elements rounded corners. So we go to the radius, border radius, and set it to 20. Okay. And now let's take this panel and drag it over this panel class and drag it over the panels. And now you can see we start to, we can actually finally see something. Let's just not forget to save this now and then. Okay. Now let's just quickly go back to our overview here, and now we can see that basically when we take kind of the outer panels, we can see we have 1, 2, 3, 4 sort of vertical panels that we should probably create next. Now that means we are in that container. That means adding 4 visual elements. It would probably be easier to name them by copy and pasting them. So let's call the first one fraction, because it will display sort of additional information on your fraction, or this will be the biggest information on your fraction. Then let's copy that and say the next one will be a panel for badges. I have no idea what those badges are doing, but they look like some achievement badges or something like that, or your technological progress or something like that. Then we will have a list of, I don't know, I think in my kind of virtual, in my imagination of that scenario, this was some other fractions. I don't know if it makes sense on the screen to actually choose other fractions, but we have to work on a list. So I just added a list to this. And finally, the last one were just some information, some text information. So let's call it panel info. So let's now start by adding the sizes of those elements. We could set them in the flex basis, but I'm just too lazy for that, and it really doesn't matter for our purposes, and that's why I will set it just here in the size. So the first one will be 35% of width and 80% height. The second one will just have 10% width and 80% height. The third one, 35% width, and the final one, 20% width. Now, those were just values that worked nicely for me. Obviously, like, I don't want to repeat myself, but obviously you can play around with this and do whatever you want to. This is just my suggestion and something that kind of worked out, and then at least we can now pretend that we got this image and we have to copy it. So if we want to copy it, it should work with those numbers. Now again, it would be nice if we could see those panels. So let's give them this class. Okay. And now one thing here, by the way, we are having again one little sort of bug that is still not fixed even in this version, but it's really just a visual thing that you have this panel class. It will probably disappear in a second. But now one thing that is really sort of just a visual thing, and I don't know, some people of you might not care about this stuff. I sort of like the thing here, how they kind of made those borders, that you have kind of those two things connected because they are just rounded kind of all together. And you have something similar here. And so I will just, this is an optional video, and I will just try to do this. Obviously, if you don't want to watch this, just skip further. But what we have to do for this is we have to kind of override this default class that we have, because we don't want the rounded corners on all sides. What we want is to get rid of the roundings on the right side. That is good, yes. Then we want to get rid of the roundings here on the left side. We want to get rid of all the roundings. Now, okay, here we will probably fix this with the individual elements that will come in a second. So let's now have a look at those badges here. You can see we basically have 6 kind of mini containers that are all of the same size. So let's do this right now. And for that, let's just choose this panel badges container and add a first visual element. Now, they are sort of panels in themselves. They're sort of a other sort of panels. So let's also create a class for them. Panel badge. And now when I just immediately set this on the element, does it have, no, it does not have the right thing. It has the panel class. We did not want that. We want panel badge. Sort of not really working. Let's try again. Now, okay, now it has it. So now let's just to be able to see it, let's change the color immediately and do something grayish, transparent grayish. Now it's probably not visible because it's collapsed. Okay, yes. And now you might remember we had this thing in our layout section where we said, what do you do when you want to have equal columns or equal rows? And one thing that you can do is, let's go on the panel badge. Again, one tiny little bug. This class is repeated. We don't need that. Okay, that should work. Now for that we go to flex and set it to flex, a flex basis of 100%. Now it's covering the whole thing. But when we now duplicate this 6 times, oh geez, I don't know what happened here. Okay, I had some tiny glitch. I had to edit this now to cut this for a second. I think, I don't know what I pressed, but something went wrong. Now it should be okay again. We said we have one of those things. We gave this a flex basis of 100%, I thought, but it's, yeah, it is 100%. It's just those numbers are weirdly displaced for some reason. Okay, and now let's duplicate it 6 times. And now you can see they are all having the same height. They are all covering exactly the same space. And now we want a couple of more things on the panel badge. Now one thing that we want is so that they are separated a little bit. Let's give them 5 pixels of margin. We don't want this, however, for the last element, so this one we have to override. Set it to 0. And now what we can do, we can take this parent badge, because now we don't need this panel class anymore. They are just having their own panel class. And now basically all of them are fine. They don't need rounded corners, except this one wants rounded corners on the top right. I think we had 20 pixels. Yes, that's nice. And this one obviously on the bottom right. Okay, and that's almost fine, except that now the whole thing should push the other 2 boxes a little bit to the right. So let's give this 5 pixels of margin. Is that enough? Yeah, I think that's enough. That looks reasonable. Oh, maybe even 10. Let's see. Is that too much? Yeah, I think it's too much, but I don't know. I'm not really an expert on those things, so the designers amongst you will definitely do that better, but it's sort of okay. Now we are almost done. We just need to remove those rounded corners here on the right side. So top right, yes, top right 0 and bottom right 0. Now, do they have a small space? No, they don't have any space. So now also we need a margin right of 5 pixels. And now here, the same thing with the rounded corners on the left, 0 and 0. And again, this should not be this outer panel, but we should have three little panels inside here. So let's add a visual element. Let's give it the panel class because we can reuse the colors, although I don't know if that's, yeah, okay, let's just do that. It's not such a big thing to correct this later. But now what we have to do is we also want this to have a flex basis of 100% so that we have 3 equal guys. And now we can duplicate them. Now you can see we have 3 equal panels. From the parent panel, we can remove the panel class. And now the only thing that is there to fix is remove all the roundings on this one, I think. Yes. And let's start with all actually removed on all of them, because the only one we need is here on the top right and here on the bottom right. And I think that this is it for our initial setup. Let's just see how this looks in the game view. I think it looks quite okay. let's just see, this panel settings is correct. Yes, okay. Yes, and I think that's a good starting point to actually start and fill this with life in the upcoming lessons. So for those of you who actually really watch this and then watch this to the end, thanks a lot. I appreciate it. Obviously also like, I don't know, working on tiny visual fixes. And I hope that at least that might be some sort of inspiration to do your own work later. So see you in the next lesson, and thank you very much.